Today, we're going to be discussing how to build the perfect soldier loadout. Note, soldiers are good for a lot of things. So today, we're going to be focusing on buffing assault weapons and SMGs. I already have a video for the best bow loadouts, which will involve Rabbit Raider Jonesy and Redline Ramirez, which are both soldiers. Then we've also got shotgun loadouts, which is covered by Buckshot Raptor, Shrapnel Headhunter. Those are both soldiers as well. And then there are abilities. I've got the minigun loadout, which is a super popular build. Lots of people like to use that. That is also covered in its own video. What I'm going to be doing today is focusing on soldiers' core strengths. The reason they start you off with Rescue Trooper Ramirez after the tutorial, just buffing ARs and SMGs. You can even see that this is built into the class perks. With Suppressive Fire, consecutive shots against the same target deal extra damage. With Stay Frosty, after 3 eliminations with your ranged weapons, you're increasing your weapon stability so you have less recoil. These soldiers in Save the World were designed to use a fully auto weapon over a sustained period of time, and the exceptions that I already mentioned will be linked to the description down below if you guys want to explore those topics. I also want to say this is an updated video from a guide that I did not realize was so obsolete. If you birthed a child at the time that this video was recorded, they may be learning to speak now. This is so old. It's like 4.5 years old, this video. I've always stuck by that video because it recommended good soldiers. If you are somebody who just built a soldier loadout off of that old video, you probably got good suggestions, but that video predates Totally Rockin' Out, which is an extremely powerful team perk that I cannot ignore. So, I also want to say one more final disclaimer on everything that I'm talking about here. This is not going to be an exhaustive list. There are a lot of soldiers in this game. There are a lot of different ways to play the game, and I am not going to be covering every single one of them. I mentioned I'm just going to be covering the basic ARs, SMGs, and everything that goes with it. I already have a substantial list of good support characters if you guys don't have some of the heroes I'm mentioning, and again, this is not exhaustive. If you want a complete video on talking about every single soldier in the game as of this video is posted, I'm going to post a tier list, linked in the description down below, where I discuss every single soldier, all of their perks, good and bad, and I literally rank them as I go. That's a really good resource if you're not sure about whether or not you should use a hero that you have. All right. Super long outro out of the way. Let's start with your basic Blast from the Past build. So, there are several key leads that you want to consider. Rescue Trooper Ramirez is the most basic. She increases your assault damage and SMG damage by 50%. That's huge. She should always be in the lead or the support if you're going to be running either of those weapons. And the alternative to her in the commander slot is in the support right here, Tactical Assault Sledgehammer. He is the other best lead soldier. 225% extra crit damage is a lot. That is a ton. In most ARs with a single crit rating perk with a base crit chance of 10%, you are critting 38% of the time. With him in the lead, that works out to an effective 85.5% damage bonus. With Totally Rockin' Out in the lead, it's way more because you're critting way more often, but that's decaying over a period of time, so it's kind of hard to nail down exactly how much he's giving you, but it's a lot. And these are the two heroes that you're going to be considering. If you're ever running an AR or an SMG, Sledgehammer should be in the lead or the support. Same with Ramirez. If one's in the lead, they just flip-flop, all right? That's going to be consistent in every single build. The other commander, the other of the big three, is Crackshot. Crackshot is unique in that he gives you the biggest damage bonus. You can see his perk is kind of long here, but it breaks down to every single time you fire a bullet, your damage goes up by 2.9%, and that's capped at 50. He caps at a 145% damage bonus. Unfortunately, that resets every time you reload, switch off your weapon for any reason. It does not reset when you're tactical sprinting, sliding, crouching, mantling, any of that. So you can get around the map pretty well nowadays. That's one of the key updates from my old video, but you do need to sustain that damage somehow. And if you have an LMG like the Hacksaw or the Terminator or the Mercury LMG, some weapon with a huge 100 round mag size, Crackshot is a great pick. If you have a ranged weapon with like a 50 plus round magazine, it can still be worth it to use Crackshot. If you're somebody who's comfortable shooting your weapon and not switching off until you're done shooting, Crackshot is an excellent lead, but I understand how that's not everybody's playstyle. The one king exception to this is the Scourge. This weapon is a hugely powerful assault weapon that never has to reload. So long as you don't let it overheat, which does count as a reload event in the game files, as long as you never let this overheat, it will continuously take take advantage of Crackshot's commander perk, and I have a whole video on this, I'll link it down below, and a whole video on this after the new movement changes, featuring how good it can be. Super strong combination, but I understand that's a mythic weapon. If you're watching this video, you're probably a new player and you don't have that. I'm just saying, in the end game, that's what you're looking forward to. Now, there is one final commander that I want to discuss regarding our topic at hand, and that is First Shot Rio. She is a little bit more niche, that's why I'm mentioning her last. Not always are you going to want to use her. If you're using a fully auto sustained fire weapon, she's not your girl. But if you're firing a weapon like the Hydra, the Rat King, or if you're using the Blackout AR from my boom build, I'll link that down below. Strongest loadout I've ever seen. Not a soldier build, actually, but she makes those first 2 shots crit every single time, and in very specific use cases, she can be amazing. I'm not suggesting her as an all-around hero. You kind of need to know what you're doing or get a build suggested to you like this Rat King video down below. But in very specific circumstances, she can be good, because your first 6 shots critting 100% of the time is amazing. With the Rat King or the Hydra, for example, if you're using a strong AR that does a ton of damage on a per bullet basis, she can go a long way. She doesn't fit into every build, but you should know she exists. Now that we got our main commanders out of the way, let's talk about team perks. I am going to disappoint many of you to say that there are pretty much only 2. This video is mostly going to be split in 2 parts, Blast from the Past and Totally Rockin' Out, but I'm going to discuss a lot of information that correlates to both of these team perks, so try not to skip around even though the timestamps are there. Blast from the Past increases your health by 200% and removes your shields. You functionally have triple health with Blast from the Past, and the support perks are amazing. Prehistoric Iza gives you 33 armor. That effectively gives you a 30-year health on top of that. That's not exactly how it works, but it's good enough to know that if you use her in support, you'll die less often. Luna and Jurassic Ken are pretty useless in this build. We're not using melees. We're not really focusing on our abilities as much. We're not using a lot of energy, so Saurian Focus doesn't really do much. And because we're not using much of our abilities, we don't need to worry about healing. The only other hero we can really talk about besides Rex Jonesy is Triceratops Ramirez. As I'm recording this, she is healing you a tiny amount over a way too long period. This is extremely slow healing. It takes like 4 minutes for her to heal you to full. It's functionally useless. The only hero that I can truly recommend that you should use besides Iza is Rex Jonesy, of course. He adds 3% of your current health to your damage. The easiest math for this is if you have 1,000,000 health, he'll add 30,000 damage. This has a 1-second cooldown. So you use it, it does 30,000, you wait a second, it does another 30,000, you know, it just adds the damage on top of your sustained fire. It's not a ton, but considering you're using Blast from the Past in this loadout example, you definitely want him there. And I said there's a lot of overlap because a lot of this build is going to be shared with Totally Rockin' Out. I just want to discuss the different team perks right here. So let's talk about Totally Rockin' Out. Totally Rockin' Out gives you a massive 160 crit rating, and it heals you every time it's activated. What I'm going to show you now is a nice little chart that will be linked in the description down below that correlates to how crit rating on the left here goes to crit chance on the right. It's not 1-to-1. So when you have a 160 crit rating, you're actually getting a 57% crit chance bonus. With that base 10% I was talking about earlier, if you had no crit rating perks, Totally Rockin' Out activating from the beginning would bring you from 10 to 67% chance to crit. When you're critting 2/3 of the time, Sledgehammer in the lead is an enormous damage bonus. It's a lot. However, because most weapons are running a crit rating perk, you're actually kind of getting a 190 crit rating. It's not that much extra. I still recommend crit rating with Totally Rockin' Out, by the way, because even though you're only really getting 2.5% extra crit chance, it does mean that you're going to be critting a lot more when Totally Rockin' Out isn't active, which is fairly often. If you don't trap accordingly or have wafers on hand, Totally Rockin' Out has a lot of downtime, so it's really good when you need it, but it's not always there. So I always recommend a crit rating perk, but that means that you'll typically have that 59.5% bonus, which is 0.5%, functionally 70% chance to crit. That is a ton of extra damage before we even talk about the support perks, which are awesome. So I'm going to put in the usual suspects, Battle Beat and then Fumble or Wafers here. Battle Beat is our favorite. She activates Rock and Riff. All of them activate Rock and Riff, I should say. That will increase your damage by 50%. So not only are we critting 70% of the time, but we're doing 50% damage on top of that. We're not using melees today, but boosting your melee attack speed by 32% is fantastic, and it's relevant in my Ninja Loadout build guide. Link to that video down below if you guys feel like running melees after this video. So she activates her perk. After 10 eliminations in 9 seconds, she'll activate Rock and Riff, and that's where the other support perks come in here. Sub Wafers is a support perk where if you harvest metal objects, you have a chance to get wafers. When you eat these wafers, you can activate Totally Rockin' Out on command, switch off to your weapon, and do tons of damage. That's a lot of maintenance sometimes I like to just run Fumble, where if you eliminate enemies, they have a 7% chance to drop a football, and then you just run over it and activate it. Both are completely fine. It depends on your playstyle, what weapon you're using, how you feel that day. When I'm showcasing these loadouts in videos, I like wafers so that I can just activate Totally Rockin' Out whenever, because it's really embarrassing to eliminate a crowd of enemies in front of you without the team perk active, and then you kill that 10th enemy, they're all dead, and then Battle Beat kicks in, and it's like, well, where was my team perk? So wafers can be really good for that use case, but Fumble's good if you're being a little lazy. Now, I do have one final suggestion regarding Totally Rockin' Out. If you are using Blast in the Past, you can use Sledge in the lead, or Ramirez, or Crackshot. It doesn't really matter. They have basically the same damage output. But if you are critting more often with Totally Rockin' Out, Sledgehammer is hugely better. It's not even a comparison anymore. He absolutely needs to be the commander if you're running Totally Rockin' Out. If you don't have him, you're fine. Okay, honestly, you can use Ramirez in the lead. You'll be good. I'm just saying, if you have the option, if you eventually voucher him or get him from his event, timeline in the description if you guys want to see when he comes back, then, you know, just look forward to him. If you don't have him, you're fine. If you do have him, he's hugely better. I just want to make that clear. No stress. This build guide is meant to be for all players, so I got you all covered. All right. Now, as far as team perks are concerned, that's pretty much it. If you absolutely have none of these, Cool Customer is okay. Preemptive Strike is okay. Cool Customer's base game. Preemptive Strike comes from Raven for some reason. He just gives you that. So if you unlock that hero, you get that. And from there, I'm going to let you guys figure it out. Just scroll through your team perks. Use whatever works. You don't absolutely need a team perk. I am somebody who's been sleeping in the end game for a lot of years now, so I like Totally Rockin' Out and I favor it heavily, but you will be fine. If you're power level 90 or less, or even 100 and whatever, you're going to be good. You don't need these specific team perks. These are just the best ones that you should strive for. I do have an entire video breaking down every single team perk in the game. It's completely up to date and will give you all the information that you need. Link to that down below. It's about half an hour, but it's timestamped so you can get all the information you want. Now that we've got Totally Rockin' Out covered, I want to take a step back and talk about Crackshot from earlier. With Totally Rockin' Out and Crackshot in the lead, you can make this insane build. You can put Battle Beat in support, you know, just activating Totally Rockin' Out, Fumble, because if we switch off to eat our wafers, it'll kill Crackshot's ability, and then all of these beautiful support perks. We got Sledgehammer from before, adding 75% crit damage to all of our shots. Then we've got Saurian Might from Rex Jonesy. That is because of a bug that I sort of want to talk about only because it's been in the game for a lot of years. Just like the Chromium Ramirez bug from the past video, that one got patched. This one might be patched as well, but it's been around for so long that I figured I'd talk about it. His perk of adding that extra health kind of applies twice for Battle Beat. It's a little complicated, but if you get a kill with Rex Jonesy active on it, it will count for 2 kills off of Battle Beat's elimination. That means that you can actually activate her ability with less than 10 eliminations. It's a little weird, but it kind of works, and I figured I'd mention it. If you don't want to take advantage of that and you just want to do some constant damage, the 17% from Rescue Trooper Ramirez is perfectly fine. This is how this build normally looks. And then there's Bulletstorm Jonesy. Bulletstorm Jonesy is an excellent support hero as well. I've talked about a lot of support heroes already, whether or not you noticed it. This build guide video is less focused on a singular loadout and more on the different recipes, but for Crackshot, there's only really one best way to go, and that's with Bulletstorm Jonesy in support. He has a perk very similar to Crackshot, where he stacks up your damage to 25% in support, which is less than 50, and then in the lead, he stacks up your damage by 2%, also capped at 25, so it's only 50, but he's increasing your fire rate. I don't value fire rate that much because you're just shooting faster and reloading more often, so you're not really sustaining a higher damage output. You will kill the enemies immediately quicker. That fire rate can be very satisfying, but you spend so much time reloading that it's not super versatile. And in this instance, where we're using Crackshot and like perhaps a Storm King Scourge, where we never have to reload, you're going to be overheating the weapon very fast, and that's no good either. So you get better use out of your bullets before you have to stop and reload or wait to cool down if you're using Bulletstorm in support, and that's where he kind of belongs in my opinion. But this is a very, very solid build you can make with Crackshot in the lead. Now that we've got our team perks figured out, I'm going to leave it on Totally Rockin' Out for now. We need to talk about support perks. I already talked about Sledge and all of our different commanders. All of our commanders work great in support for all the same reasons I just mentioned, but there are a lot of options. This was set up for Blast from the Past. If you are using Blast from the Past, Crossbones Barrett is the best support perk in the game. Even if you're using Totally Rockin' Out, Coconuts are incredible. They basically give you a third of your health, 33% immediately. So if you're using Blast from the Past and like a shotgun loadout, for example, your health can get into the 2 millions very easily. So to get 667,000 of it back just like that is incredible. And it heals you over the next 30 seconds, which is amazing. It's actually really good healing. Like, it's faster than a couple of campfires. I think I said that in my old video, and I'll even reuse the old footage because it works. It's true. And I already did the editing, so that saves me a second. So there you go. 2 thumbs up for that. But it gives you good healing over the next 30 seconds. Sometimes I'll eat a coconut when I'm fully healed just because I know I'm going to take some damage, and that extra healing will help out. Not only does it heal you, but if you have Crossbones Barret in support, technically speaking, coconuts don't give you a damage bonus. Crossbones Barret does. So if you get coconuts from a teammate, they won't necessarily give you that damage bonus. But if you're running this solo and you're using your own coconuts, you're going to get that 16% from Barret. And I mean, 16% extra damage is just great straight up. That's one of the best in the game. In fact, the highest damage perk normally is usually Rescue Trooper Ramirez at 17%. There are some edge cases I'll talk about later, but 16% is just under that in one of the best support perks. The other one that I recommend is a balancing perk. So there's like a few key things you want to balance in your loadouts. You want to manage your damage. You absolutely want to do a lot of damage. That's why we're sitting here with Sledge and Totally Rocking Out. But then you also want to keep track of healing. Activating Totally Rocking Out does heal you. I kind of showed that here. It's not a lot of health, but it does sort of keep you alive, and you need to be mindful of it. Coconuts, of course, takes care of that if you need it. And then finally, you need to sort of manage your ammo. I actually really like the idea of managing your ammo with Stars and Stripes. Jonesy, he increases your mag size significantly. So he gives you a 24% chance not to consume ammo, and that is really good because that applies to the ammo that isn't fired. How this works is if you shoot 100 rounds out of a weapon, on average, assuming perfect chances, 24 of that ammo will just not fire from your magazine. Like, you will fire the bullet, it will do damage, it just won't consume the ammo. So it's actually a cost-saving measure on top of increasing your mag size, because it increases the mag size by having the ammo still in there. So his perk will apply to the remaining 24%, and then the remaining, whatever it is, 18 or like 6 or so, and then the remaining 2. And because it keeps applying to itself, it's really more like a 31.7% mag size increase. It's a really, really good perk. I threw him in the lead one time with a quad mag size Mercurial MG, and I fired for 2 minutes straight. Super satisfying. Very, very good hero in support. But the other king of support perks in that regard is Chaos Agent. If you are less interested in shooting for a long time and just want to reload quickly, Quick Fingers is awesome. This does trigger a reload event, so it will cut off Crackshot's ability, but reloading with a frag grenade is super fast. Reloading with Shockwave is super fast. Reloading with your War Cry is super fast. It's a really, really good support perk, really good for getting right back into the fight, and because you're reloading with your frag grenades or your Shockwave or your abilities in general, you can run a mag size perk on your weapon, and that will actually increase your overall damage output. Note, your weapon won't be doing any more damage, but because you won't be stopping to reload, your sustained damage over time versus a mini boss or a smasher or something will actually be a lot higher total damage output with Chaos Agent in support because you spend so much less time reloading. He's a really, really good hero, even if he doesn't seem like it. Now, I've already talked about Crackshot and Blast from the Past and a couple of recommended support perks. There are a ton of different directions you can go with this, so let's start off with some alternates. If you don't have the heroes that I already suggested, a big suggestion that I have that I always like to talk about is Locked and Reloaded. Skull Ranger Ramirez and Skull Ranger Jonesy are both kind of the exact same heroes, so it doesn't really matter which one you use, but basically when you reload, it ups your weapon damage by 15%. This is that tier list forming, by the way. I said Coconuts was really good at 16 because Rescue Trooper is 17, Skull Ranger is 15%. The missing piece of that puzzle is Ice Queen. She gives you a 14% damage bonus to frozen enemies. She's not really relevant to this build here, but I wanted to mention her in general just so that you have a more informed outlook of how good a support perk is, and 15% is middle of the pack. It's why I'm mentioning her as an alternate. You can absolutely use her. If you heard what I said about Chaos Agent and extra ammo and you don't really care, she's really good for just getting some more damage. It's only 5 seconds after a reload, but you're going to be reloading a lot in the game, so it's something worth knowing. But if you don't want to use her, let's talk about Light Show Spitfire. Light Show Spitfire is a hero that's very similar to Assault Ammo Recovery. He increases your mag size by 30%. And 30% is good, but what's great is the fact that he's a quest hero. Every single Save the World player gets Light Show Spitfire any time of the year. No voucher necessary. You don't have to research him. You don't have to play an event. He's available forever. However, there are a couple of caveats. One, 30% mag size increase is less than 31.7. I've checked like several times. And two, he doesn't care about a mag size perk. So if you're running a weapon like the Hacksaw, Terminator, whatever, that is a 100 round mag size getting boosted to 130. If you use a mag size perk, you go from 100 to 175%. With Light Show Spitfire, you're still only getting 30 extra bullets. If you use Assault Ammo Recovery, his perk takes place after the perks are on there. So your 175 round mag goes to be a lot more than 205. It actually respects the mag size perks and goes a lot further, which is why I always recommend Assault Ammo Recovery if you can get him. But I understand he's an event hero, so Light Show Spitfire will work completely fine if you want to use them. And I suppose I should mention Assault Ammo Recovery is only ARs and SMGs. In the grand scheme of the big game, obviously Light Show Spitfire works on shotguns when Assault Ammo Recovery doesn't, but today's focus is ARs and SMGs, so Assault Ammo Recovery is as good as he is. Now, I mentioned that 20% bonus from earlier, and that's because of Extraterrestrial Rio. She is kind of one of the highest support perk damage perks in the game, but you can see the caveat is that it's energy damage only, and you need your shields to be above 50%. In Fortnite Save the World, you typically want to use the correct element. I have a whole video on that. I'll link it down below if you guys want to watch that before I continue with this video. You should, because it'll keep you informed, but I'll explain briefly real quick here that there's a basic trio of nature, fire, water. Water being good against fire, fire being good against nature, nature being good against water. So in Save the World, we typically have seasons. If it's an event like when I'm recording this video right now, this is going to date this recording, by the way, we have an ice storm in pretty much every single water mission, so it makes sense to use a nature weapon. They will do 100% of their damage to those ice enemies. During some parts of the year, we actually don't have any specific elements, so that will change from 4-player to 4-player. You should always check your mission's modifier so that you use the correct elements. Energy will get around that, though. Energy will do 75% of its damage to any element, so you never have to think about it. You will do more with a matching element, but if you want to be lazy, or if you're a new player who doesn't want to have multiple copies of weapons, energy will do just fine. And if you are using energy, you can make up for some of that missing damage by using Extraterrestrial Rio. Again, you need your shields to be above 50%, so no blast from the past, and no playing dangerous, because her bonus will go away, but 20% is a lot of extra damage, and it's something you should know about. Now, another support perk that I always like to recommend is Wukong. He is not the best in the game, that's why I'm mentioning him so late, but every 6 eliminations, you just trigger an explosion that does some extra damage. That can affect a large group of husks and really help you with some crowd clearing. It's not super amazing, but it's nice to have. If you haven't had a lot of the heroes that I've recommended so far, he can fill out your loadout and do some extra group damage. I actually use them myself sometimes. When I'm running a weapon like the Pop Shot, I know it's a shotgun and I'm not talking about shotguns today, but when I'm locked to a single target weapon like the Pop Shot, the Thrasher, any SMG or AR for that matter, he can add some extra crowd clearing that was missing, and it's kind of nice to fill out the loadout. Now, I'm mentioning a hero you probably expected me to talk about super late in this video because I already talked about coconuts, I already talked about how good the healing is from that. Survivalist Jonesy exists. He is a super good early game hero. Lots of beginner players get him from base game llamas, regular mission alerts. He's super easy to acquire, and he does heal you when you eliminate enemies. The problem that I have with Survivalist is that he is almost on the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to healing. It's only 39 base health over 3 seconds, which is like 13 base health every second, which is not that much. That does not scale to be a lot in the end game. If you're using Blast from the Past, he will typically not keep up. If you're a lower power level player, there's a lot more leeway. You might get away with Survivalist Jonesy just fine. And if you don't have any of the heroes I've mentioned, he is perfectly fine to slot in your build for some extra healing. I just want to make all that very clear when I recommend him because he is good. Honestly, if you just want some basic healing, you don't want to think about it, it's fine. But the kills don't stack. You're never going to heal faster than that 13 per second, and there are so many better options. Coconut's a lot better. Eating wafers with totally rocking out is a lot better. If you have neither of those, even throwing down a campfire is good. If you don't want to spend resources on traps, then okay, all right, you finally got me. Survivalist Jonesy comes in, he's good. There are weird hero exceptions, like Dennis is a thing. If he goes ahead and drops some burgers on the ground, they can give you a lot of health, but it's only an 8% chance, so Survivalist is a lot more consistent. I just try to be very careful because I see a lot of people using Survivalist forever and always, and I just want you guys to be careful because he's not really going to do the same thing in the end game that he does in Stonewood. He's going to fail you in the end, and I just want everybody to be aware of that. So with that being said, let me recommend one final support perk, Fleet. Yeah, if you are really running out of options, if you don't have anything to fill out this loadout, this YouTuber keeps talking about event heroes that you don't have, Fleetfoot Ken's great. He's super common, same thing as Survivalist. He'll increase your movement speed, and running faster is never a bad thing. It's just that he's not adding any damage. He's not healing you, he's not increasing your mag size, you're not reloading faster, he's not buffing your abilities in any way, you're just going a little quicker. And he's nice to have. I stopped using him because eventually you grow out of Fleetfoot Ken, but he's definitely a great way to cap off the build if you're just trying to fill things out. Now, I am going to revisit the very beginning disclaimer that I made where you do not need to use the heroes I mentioned today. I have not been focusing on abilities today at all. As mentioned, minigun is linked in the description down below. Shockwave and grenades aren't strong enough to really use a support perk for, but if you are working with a limited hero quantity, I encourage you to just scroll through your list of heroes, try to do your best to pick a hero that sounds good. You know, if you're scrolling through and you see something that might make sense, maybe you're one of those people that got the mythic Master Grenadier and she makes your frag radius a little bit bigger and that works for you, go ahead. You're not going to be punished too terribly. Even if you use a support perk that's doing nothing for you, the worst case scenario is that you just have a dead perk. You're still going to be fine. You'll just do a little less damage. The key thing in Save the World is that like you have a really strong commander and a solid team perk and it's activated. After that, it doesn't super matter what you run because you're going to be good from there. Even gadgets are pretty much just opinion. I run turrets and adrenaline rush forever. I have lots of friends that run banner, helps when you respawn. Slow field's super good versus mini bosses. Airstrike and proximity mines you can pretty much ignore. Supply drops are good if you're trying to farm. That's totally fine. And teleport will get you around the map, but it's a little weird to take advantage of that. So gadgets aren't that complicated, and it's pretty much preference. Okay, I think that's just about it. If you have any questions, comment down below. I do read my comments even years later. I will see them. Subscribe if you're new. If this helped you, I really appreciate it. Videos like this take a ton of work. That's why I waited almost 5 years to re-record this, and a subscription goes a long way. But what goes even further is clicking a recommended video. A couple of them are going to pop up at the end here. Thank you again for watching. See you guys in the next one, and have a good rest of your day. And then